Uh, I welcome you all to our today's, probably the last session, this session 5 on climate finance landscape, policy and governance. My name is Subarna Barua. I'm a professor of finance at the University of Dhaka and also have been given the privilege to chair this session today. We have very rich panel of esteemed experts and guests today. So, as you know, this is part of the Climate Week organized by CPD, the Center for Policy Dialogue. On behalf of the panel, I would like to thank the CPD for organizing this session. So the topic, as I said, the theme of this session is climate finance landscape, policy and governance. And we probably have been talking for long about improving our climate finance access and also climate finance, fulfilling the climate finance gaps and related challenges in terms of the policy and governance. Today, we hope we will be having a very insightful and deep discussion on this so we can put forward some suggestions for the government. To set a background, but before setting the background, I think I should also spell out the names of the esteemed panelists who are present today. I have here Mr. Mahfuzul Haq, Senior Research Fellow, Climate Finance Governance, Transparency International, Bangladesh. I can see him. We are known to each other. We have Mr. M. Mofazzal Hossain, Research Associate from Change Initiative. We also have Mr. Sabidin Ibrahim, Senior Sub-Editor from the daily Banik Barta. We have our esteemed Professor Selection Grade, Dr. Shah Mohammad Hassan Habib from Bangladesh Institute of Bank Management. We also have a private sector representative, I would say more, Ms. Saida Afzalun Nessa, Head of Sustainability at the HSBC. And we have Mr. Muhammad Hamidul Islam Chaudhry, Head of Product, Climate Change, Sustainable Urban Development Cluster, GIZ. I'm not sure whether Mr. Chaudhry has already joined us, probably not, but we're expecting soon. We have Mr. Shardar Asadul Zaman, Assistant Resident Representative of UNDP, just at the right corner. We have Mr. Khandaka Morshad Millat, former Director of Sustainable Finance Department, Bangladesh Bank, very well-known face in the industry. Millat Bhai is on the left corner. We also have the current Director of the Sustainable Finance Department of Bangladesh Bank, Mr. Chaudhry Liaquat Ali. He's just right on the right side to me. So I welcome you all the panelists, and also the participants of today's panel discussion. So before getting into the serious discussion, I think I would take an opportunity for 2 minutes to set the context why we are here today. There are a lot of estimates, several estimates done by different development partners, different independent agencies about the climate finance needs and gaps for Bangladesh. I think it's an opportunity to let you know that the government has also done its own estimate. Approximately, considering the national adaptation plan we have the national determined contribution, which is the kind of the mitigation plan. And also we have a long-term Bangladesh development plan that talks about the climate resilient development of the country. So combining all these three plans and goals together, we find that we have an estimated need for $29.29 billion every year for climate actions. But currently, the estimates from the finance ministry suggest that the government is able to mobilize only $2.76 billion US dollars every year, which means we have a climate finance gap of approximately $26.5 billion, which is about 6.07% of GDP. So that's massive, and this need is actually expanding every year. And we really need drastic actions to close this gap, to narrow down this gap. And in order to do that, it's not the government only, also the private sector is a very critical partner in this process, in addition to the existing partners like development partners or the other countries that are helping us. So in terms of this discussion, we have some guiding questions. I try to allocate the guiding questions matching the best in terms of the best matches with the panelists who are present here today. So I would like to start with Mr. Mahfuzul Haq from TIB. We all know that we are right at the brink of, it's just less than 1 month remaining for COP30. And in COP29, we signed the new quantified collective goal, which is called the NCQG. So the NCQG aims for mobilizing $1.3 trillion by 2035 in terms of total global climate finance. But also it also aims to mobilize at least $300 billion from developed to developing countries. So I'd like to come to Mr. Mahfuzul Haq about this NCQG. What are the implications of this NCQG for Bangladesh's adaptation and mitigation financing strategies, if you could shed light on these, particularly in the context of the upcoming COP30, where Belém to Baku to Belém roadmap is going to be the priority agenda in the COP, right? So yes, Mr. Mahfuzul Haq, it's over to you. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all participants, and inviting me, particularly by CPD, to speak about climate finance and particularly the NCQG. You may be aware that Bangladesh actually the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. We know this. It's a very common understanding. Since 2007, particularly from the Copenhagen Accord, the finance issue became very, very important issue. And before that, we know that Kyoto Protocol was there, and it focused more on gases, methane gases, and other gas elimination from the atmosphere, which we know that it didn't instrumentalize at the end after 2000. And then the global crisis, actually, we know the climate crisis become very, very imminent crisis for the world. And the phase came out from implementing the Kyoto Protocol to the Paris Agreement particularly. It was a gradual move from Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement. We know there are a number of things happened, but what actually said after the Kyoto Protocol was the need of finance. Actually, it was very important, because we know that we cannot prevent the global climate crisis unless we have the finance. Then the finance, the target for the finance was set by the global community, particularly the Copenhagen Accord in 2007. It didn't actually give us a whole picture how actually finance will be mobilized and what portion will be actually received by the vulnerable countries and what percentage will be given by the global communities, particularly the developed countries. And there is a term of equity, transparency, accountability, integrity. Particularly, we know that Bangladesh actually contributes only 0.05% of the global carbon emission, and the platform said, based on what actually should be the basics for receiving climate finance, is the common but differentiated responsibilities. One that is very clearly mentioned in the Paris Agreement, and the other form was actually the polluters pay principle, which become very much important for us. Those who pollute will be actually paying the climate finance. This is the major debate we actually moved from Paris Agreement actually. So now it was said that after Paris Agreement, Bangladesh or the less developed countries will receive 1 will receive $100 billion per year, which later deferred to 2020 to 2025. We know that since 2000 to 2022, the commitment actually, developed countries actually failed to deliver the desired climate finance. And there was a transparency issue particularly. It's like a political game that we commit and we didn't, the developed countries didn't deliver actually. So in 2023, the developed countries provided $100 billion, which they actually communicated at the UN, UNFCCC. And there is a prominent report by the Oxfam that only 23% is actually climate finance, because the climate principle of climate finance, it must be new and additional to ODA. So official development assistance is not actually climate finance. That the transparency issue is there actually. So the climate finance provider, we know that public and private entities, that includes the multi-donor banks, private agencies, and the governments from the and other entities from the various sources they are providing, is actually not trackable. The source and the delivery and the recipient, you cannot track actually. So the issue is the communication by the developed countries about the finance they have been providing for us is a transparency issue actually. They are telling that 100 billion is actually delivered, but actually the finance is not delivered actually. So now in this background, we are now on a new position, which is new communication, NCQG, which is which we know that after the Baku, it is almost ready that we will move forward after 2025. The new climate finance goal is set actually, which is $300 billion per year until 2035. And it will eventually reach to $1.3 trillion. The developed countries will deliver. But yet again, the question is actually how much will be delivered. Just for example, the Oxfam report, which is very much focused on separating the climate finance from the ODA, is very important. Separating climate finance from the energy projects, particularly those are polluting fossil fuel projects, is very important. Apart from identifying the climate finance from the debt, from the loan, is very important, because being now I'm coming to my main point of argument is what is the implication of NCQG for Bangladesh actually. I can give you one statistics. Since 2010, it's to the 2025, in last 15 years, we have received only $750 million from donor communities, particularly from the Annex 1 countries, those who are actually polluters, we tell it in these terms. They provided only $765 million grant only. This includes the GCF, the AF, and GEF. Almost 12 climate finance, major climate finance portfolio are operating in Bangladesh, and they provide only $765 million. But our national need is actually, that includes in NAP, we have identified that Bangladesh need almost $10 billion per year. And we have received only 700 or 800 million dollar unconditional grant-based finance in last 15 years. You see the gap actually. So the implication for the NCQG is very important for us because it's more focused. This is one area. The other area is a large number of the climate finance that came actually not unconditional. When the finance actually coming, it's actually coming with some condition. Like mitigation is our not priority. I'm not telling that mitigation should not be our priority. Mitigation is our priority, but adaptation is the basic priority for us, because um, adaptation, the GCF has the strategy for 50-50 adaptation and mitigation, which is not actually fit for Bangladesh as well, because we need to identify how much money actually we need for adaptation and how much money we need for mitigation, because mitigation is actually more technology driven, which we purchase from other countries, and at a certain point of time we have to repay that one as well, particularly for the mitigation focused activities. But adaptation, it's mostly grant based, but there is no business model in adaptation activities in Bangladesh. Once the money is free, it becomes actually more prone to corruption, you know, that in Bangladeshi context we cannot avoid this. So the NCQG is implication of NCQG in Bangladesh is very important, because the NCQG has actually set a momentum for focusing more on adaptation, which was not actually earlier was priority in Paris Agreement or other instruments, the financial instruments. So this is one area, and the other area is it's more grant based actually. So Bangladesh being most vulnerable country, we actually prioritize the grant based finance for us. So the NCQG has the same priority as well. But the challenge is our capacity to access the finance actually. It's a very delicate balance between when I ask for money from the international sources, that we need finance, which is mostly which we actually intend to receive as a grant, but the recipient must be very much efficient of using and implementing the finance, because those who are providing, they are actually providing the finance for better utilization, so that the poor and the most vulnerable people can get benefit from this finance. But unfortunately, our experience since 2011, we have been tracking the climate projects in Bangladesh. We have tracked more than 100 projects on Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund and Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Fund and Bangladesh Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund. We have tracked major climate funds in Bangladesh and their implementation. So we have identified that we had a study, TIB have a study with Swatch, University College London, which identifies that 35% of the climate finance is being misused in Bangladesh, which is a very rough figure, very conservative figure. And our research, recent assessment actually suggests that it's more than 50% even. So the misuse of the climate finance is much higher than our previous assessment, because we included the international climate finance this time as well. So NCQG is very important, and its modality, when we actually telling that we should access adaptation based, grant based finance, then the other parties, the capacity to access this finance and to capacity to implement this finance. So it's very important for us. So it's a delicate balance between implementation, its use, and accessing this fund. Our previous record of accessing the International Climate Fund is not that, experience is not even good, because we have seen only 3 organizations that have been actually given priority to implement the projects in Bangladesh, which is Bangladesh Water Development Board, which is a very they implement a very need-based activities, disaster-focused activities. Then we have the MOEF, second highest fund receiver, and then we have the LGED, which is the highest fund receiver in Bangladesh. But unfortunately, the major focus should have been given to the coastal area, particularly the most vulnerable people. The matrix is not clear to us on what basis we will actually implement the fund. For example, the poverty impacted areas should be given priority. The vulnerable area should be given priority. We know that almost 20 coastal districts are the most vulnerable districts in Bangladesh, and they have been identified actually. But our recent analysis suggests that the fund actually gone to number of less vulnerable areas, less priority areas. So it is very important for us that the matrix is also developed from our side as well. So the other side is NCQG is very important for us, that we develop our modalities as well, how to access this finance, and the areas where to actually focus. So the implication for NCQG in Bangladesh is a greater finance for adaptation, which we must be very much, we should be focused on. Increase grant-based finance, prioritize access to vulnerable areas. So this is very important for us, and improving transparency and accountability, which is very important for us, because the monitoring evaluation in part of when we have actually went through the project implementation, different phases, particularly the excess phase, which we call sometimes the planning phase particularly. We need to consult with the local vulnerable people and those who needs the finance. But unfortunately, this is a very weak area. We don't have this area. When it comes to implementation, we don't have the efficiency to implement and bring out the best result from the implementation. And when the its monitoring and evaluation, unfortunately, our OCAG and our IMED is not actually accessing all the projects or monitoring all the projects. They are actually picking the random projects, randomly sampled projects for climate projects. So the question is, when the climate finance, which is a very very much focused to climate change and climate focused, it should be actually different from the regular development projects. We know that Sir already told 6.5% of our our budget is actually going to climate projects, and we have the budget code as well right now. So we can track which projects are actually climate focused and which is climate relevant and which is specific to climate change. So when we go to the NCQG, we need to actually instrumentalize all these priorities for the project implementation to bringing out the best result from here. So it's very important for us. The challenging and the concerning area for the NCQG is uncertainty about the total finance, because it's once again the same, because developed countries suggested that they will provide the $100 billion per year since 2020 to 2025. Now they have actually increased their financial capacity, which is they're trailing that they will deliver $1.3 trillion at the end of this decades as a climate finance. Their delivery doesn't suggest the same so far. So it's a concern. And the NCQG has over-reliance on the private sector. In Baku, they have actually more prioritized the private sector. So once the private sector is in climate finance, they will always try to extract profit from here. But the climate finance should be actually, it should be win-win situation. We know that we have a big youth in Bangladesh. A large number of our population graph, we can see, if we look at closely, a large number of them are actually youth. So we need to bring a business model in adaptation particularly. This is very important for us, so that we can actually utilize the youth and utilize the climate finance. This is an area we think we should actually prioritize. And
I think we need to.
Yes, I will wrap up this.
I'll come back again. Yeah, please.
Yes. We should actually prioritize the adaptation, which should be grant based, and mitigation when there is a co-financing opportunity. This should be actually taken very carefully so that it benefits the most vulnerable people for Bangladesh. So I'm stopping here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Listening
And
patiently.
sorry for interrupting your.
No, no, it's okay.
Yeah, we just have to. I think you raised almost most of the concerning issues you have already raised, and our own assessment. I have the document here, which is published by the Economic Relations Division of the Ministry of Finance, which says about 14% of all the funds we receive from external parties that went to climate finance, but actually they were not, only 14% of the ODAs actually are climate finance. That's the estimate of the Ministry of Finance itself. So it says how delicate situation we are facing. You said about 700 plus million. The ERD estimate says about $520 million in a year on an average. So it's a very poor scenario. But I think the most important question one of the most important questions that came up is about accessing the whatever dream, whatever target has been set up in the NCQG, how can we access more funds? As I have studied the NCQG document line by line, it explicitly prioritizes private finance. If you read the submissions of every country on the UNFCCC COP30 portal, you will see that developed countries are more, promoting the private finance. So we need more grants, but there is the question actually, how can we access more grants where grants are dying? They have already started to die. But I think on this question, how actually Bangladesh can access more grants-based financing, particularly for adaptation purpose, I would like to go to our GIZ representative, Mr. Mohammad Hamidul Islam Chaudhry, head of project, climate change and sustainable urban development. So are we going to have more grants in the coming days? If yes, or even if no, how can we access more grants? If you could please shed light on this point. Thank you. Mr. Hamid, he's not here. Yeah, that's right. So on the same question, then I will be coming to Asad Bhai, please, from UNDP. Yeah, the question is actually, we need more grants, but the grant-based financing are likely to die as the NCQG signals. Can we be really hopeful about more grants-based financing? Even if it is yes or no, the answer is yes or no, how can we actually prepare ourselves for or push for more grants-based financing to the global community? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for asking this question. And this is a very pertinent question given the context that globally the ODAs and grants are declining. And very particularly for Bangladesh, the conditions, we are now in a kind of transition condition, like we are graduating. So given this condition, while we are graduating, this grant is further declining considering this economic graduation. So this is a very critical challenge, I would say, for Bangladesh and as well as overall development landscape and very more specifically climate finance landscape. Even then, as my previous speaker mentioned, that there are different avenues of grants. Like there are a number of areas we can see vertical funds have different avenues. GCF, Global Environment Facility, JEF, Adaptation Fund, and many others. But the thing is, my previous speaker talked about capacity, which is one we may need to think about how we can make sure that we are fully capable enough to access those climate finance. This is one point. And the other point is to make sure the best utilization in a more speedy manner. When I say speedy manner is that in our country, in overall development landscape, in terms of the project or the program planning, implementation, approval, and then finally, like evaluation, we need to consider in a more comprehensive manner. For example, if we, for UNDP particular case, I can tell some example is that we help the government to access several vertical funded program to help the accessing vertical fund. The GCF or the JEF, they approved the project maybe 2-3 years back, but the country could not even started the implementation because of slow approval process. So this point we have kept telling to the government that how we can expedite this approval process, which can leverage more accessibility to the climate finance. So this is one thing, that the readiness of the country is very important to make sure that we can go for increased grant money for the climate finance particularly. In the other areas, which I can tell is also very optimistically, that yes, country is also trying to get the full preparation. For example, like UNDP is helping the government in this aspect also. Like recently we have started one program with the finance division, like how we can help the government excuse me, to make sure that climate finance can be tracked and it across the ministries, and also how the climate finance could be tagged, not only climate finance tagging, but also in terms of the geotagging, so that we can consider that the climate finance or the investment, whatever is made by the government itself or by the international climate finance, whether it is really being investment or allocated considering the geographical vulnerability. So this one is also government has really very keenly taken up to make sure that geotagging is also there. And then as a part of that program or initiative, we are also working with the government with LGD, local government division, so that they can really make sure that the block allocation or the annual development allocation through the local government institutions are made following a vulnerability indicator. And their government has developed, with the help of UNDP, climate vulnerability index. And this index is for across the country. And that shows that at the very local government level, particularly the Upazila level and the union level, the vulnerability has been assessed. And then you can see as a whole that the vulnerability, of course, we can understand is not really equal across the country. The vulnerability in Bhola and the vulnerability in Kurigram and the Sunamganj and Panchgarh and Chittagong hill tracts are not same. So government has taken up very seriously to make sure that the vulnerability-based allocation is there. And the next thing is that we are also working with IMED and also OCAG, Office of Control and Auditor General, for making sure that the climate finance related budget are evaluated in a more systematic manner. That my previous colleagues, my speaker was speaking up that one. So IMED need to really have that specialized capacity to make sure that the climate financed project they can evaluate in a more robust manner, in a more systematic manner, and the climate audit is also another area. So what I'm talking about is the entire spectrum that the government has keenly taken up, and UNDP is trying to help and work together so that the readiness part is there, and the effectiveness also can be ensured, and as well as the vulnerability can be there. I mean, the considerations can be there. But one thing is very important to critically think again still, that we need to go beyond the input and output factor. Rather, we need to think about how we can make sure that our engagement or the participation is more, incorporate the resilience outcome. So resilience outcome means I'm talking about how it is contributing to the reduced vulnerability, or it is going beyond, like helping the co-benefiting, like the job creation and making sure that the health improvement or the communities are happening or like that. And the other aspect is also, like, we need to think about equity indicators, and that needs to incorporate, like making sure that the funding, climate finance, are reaching to the women and reaching to the indigenous peoples and also local communities capacity building. So there are areas that we need to further improve. But going back to your point again, just to refer, is that we know climate finance grants are reducing, but on the other hand, investment are also coming. But there also we need to think how the government or the country will be capable in terms of the climate finance negotiation. So we know that government is now preparing how to really go for a increased trade negotiation capacity building in terms of the LDC graduation. But my personal opinion also would be in this context also in terms of the climate finance negotiation capacity also needs to be really thought through, so that government and the country is fully equipped in terms of that global climate negotiation table to really raise voice in a kind of very structured manner backed up with quality data and as well as like evidences. And my last point would be like climate diplomacy is also another area that we really need to consider about, because we cannot really avoid the global challenge, and particularly in many areas that my previous speaker talked about. But we also need to think about that grant and as well as investment, concessional loan, and the different types of financial instrument, de-risking instrument can be really molded together in a kind of blended finance modality that we know will be eventually a kind of reality, but given this reality, we need to be very much thoughtful, considerable, and calculative. And that's how I think the country can really chase the declining trend of the grant, but as well as make sure that we can make the best out of it in the changing context. Thank you.
Thank you, Asad Bhai. Just to let you know that we have two more panelists joined online. Dr. Janak Raj, a senior fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress, and she's from Sri Lanka. And we have Irandati Patiraja, a research fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka. So I welcome you both here. I hope you can hear me. But again, just a bit of extension of what you said, actually. So in terms of, we know that as you were talking about accessing blended finance, because pure grants could be dying, so we need actually modalities of blending together. So we don't have a national climate finance strategy yet. Probably we will be seeing very soon coming up, but that has to incorporate all these. But one very specific question, you talked about the support you are giving to the local government institutions. What current challenges you see with the local government institutions that are actually preventing these institutions to access climate finance? What do you see?
I mean, local government institution itself?
Yeah, themselves, yeah. What kind of challenges or gaps you see actually that we should be targeting?
In this context, I would say like local government institutions' own capacity in terms of the prioritization and also making sure that they can really get the money as per their requirement. Because we know like our resource allocation is very centralized, and the local government institutions, whatever they want to do, they don't really have the resource generation or resource mobilization capacity at their own. This is one area. And the other area is for making sure that the entire decisions are more developed in a kind of more participatory manner. This is also important area. I know, and we know that local government institutions has act, and the act talks about like more participatory schemes selection and more participatory planning going forward. But we need to really make sure that those are fully applied in a very robust manner, in an efficient manner, and making sure that those are very much inclusive. Because unless and until we can really make those are inclusive, then we cannot really maximize the resources that whatever we get from the central government or in different ways, we cannot really confirm those use. So these are the areas I think we see on the ground. But another point that I want to take the opportunity as a continuation of this point is that as I mentioned, like CBI's climate vulnerability index that the government has adopted to apply across the country, we need to think how we can make it dynamic. Dynamic it means UNDP helped the government to develop this CBI, but it has been developed with the data from, at the backend data from more than 50 categories of data from different ministries and different departments. For example, like meteorological department, water resource ministries, and then BBS data, and then poverty-related data, and health data. But now the challenge is how we can make sure that this CBI is dynamic, that it will be based on real-time data, and it can be updated periodically. And through this process, I think the local government local government institutions can get more, I mean, the real-time status in terms of their vulnerability, and the central government and the local government together can really make sure that the resource allocation is the right time, the right place is going there, so that the most vulnerable community or the areas, locality can get required allocation. Making sure that they are as per their deserve, depending on the vulnerability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadujaman. I'd like to go to Dr. Janak Raj. Dr. Raj is from India, actually. I apologize for my earlier remark. Dr. Raj has extensive experience of working with the India's financial sector, including MDB reforms, and I can see the profile of Dr. Raj is extensive. So we have had discussion about one of the key concerns, Dr. Raj, that came up is about the effectiveness of climate finance utilizations, and also there are concerns regarding the transparency. Actually, how much actually we are able to effectively utilize, and what is the real outcome of the projects, tracking mechanisms, everything. So based on your experience and perceptions, what institutional and public financial management reforms you think should be in place in countries like Bangladesh? And of course, you can also speak up in the context of India as well, because we have close similarity in terms of the socioeconomic characteristics. So what kind of reforms you think could make things much better than what we are at this moment? Thank you. Dr. Raj, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. So before I come to your point, let me just, give you an overview of the study which we are going to release in about 3 days' time. That is about climate finance estimates. There have been various climate finance estimates, but most of the climate finance estimates, which of course run into trillion of US dollar every year, even for emerging and developing economies. And, they were all they all followed top-down approaches and model-based, and, many of the studies we couldn't understand. So about 2 years back, we undertook a study to assess the climate finance requirements of 9 emerging market economies, which of all are part of G20. Of the 9 emerging market economies, 5 are BRICS economies, and 4 other economies which are part of G20 are Mexico, Argentina, Indonesia, and Turkey. So these 9 economies we covered. Our idea was basically to follow a bottom-up approach and to arrive at climate finance estimates for these 9 emerging market economies. So let me give you a good news. As against the requirements indicated by various other studies in trillions of US dollars, and because of the model-based approach which they follow, we find that the requirements are far less than that. Let me give you one key reason for this. Of course, all those studies are not comparable because they follow different, not only different models, but also different approaches in terms of what's the baseline and whether they have considered adaptation also, or whether they have considered other goals like development goals. So they were not comparables. So the basic reason why our estimates are lower, let me give you an example of power transition. We find that most of the studies have not taken into account the savings which they would have from by not investing in fossil fuel based sources of power. If you are investing more in renewables, then naturally you are saving capex on fossil fuel based sources of power. Likewise for the road transport. For road transport, you don't have to. If you are investing more in electric vehicles, then you must be saving on internal combustion engine vehicles. So we have done this study for 9 emerging market economies, about which I have already mentioned, and we covered 4 sectors. We covered power, as I mentioned earlier, road transport, cement and steel. Let me tell you, I have not come across any other study which has covered steel and cement and road transport. Most of the studies have concentrated on energy transition. And for the 9 economies, our assessment is that they would need by 2030 2.2 trillion US dollar, which works out to something like 250 billion US dollar every year. And the existing estimates are something like running from 2 to 3.5 trillion US dollar every year for the next several years. So our estimates are far lower than them. And most of the climate finance estimate is not coming from the power energy transition. It's coming from the cement and steel sectors, because these are hard to abate sectors. And there are they produce CO2 CO2 emissions, not only because they use fossil fuel based sources of power, but also because of the processes they follow. So we find the cement steel sector needs the largest amount of climate finance, something like 1.1 trillion US dollar up to 2030. Then comes steel sector, which will require 453 billion US dollar, and then road transport would need 459 billion US dollar. This amount is largely on account of China. China, though the number of vehicles in 2030 in China are going to come down, but they are developing fast speed charging infrastructure. And that's the cost of developing fast speed charging infrastructure is something like 7 times more than that of slow or medium speed chargers. So it's basically because of China. If you exclude China, the total requirement is only 123 billion US dollar, of which 105 billion US dollar is on account of transitioning from fossil fuel based from ICEVs to EVs, and only 19 billion US dollar for developing the charging infrastructure. And the energy transition, according to our assessment, needs only 149 billion US dollars, of which power generation would need 121 billion US dollar, and storage, both pumped storage as well as battery storage, would need 28 billion US dollars. Let me point it out here that there will be saving 156 billion US dollar on fossil fuel based sources of power, and the renewables will need 277 billion US dollar. So on a net basis, it would need only 121 billion US dollars. So these estimates, if you make this kind of investment in 9 emerging market economies, you'll be able to abate something like 32.9 billion tons of CO2. The average cost which we have worked out comes out to $53 per ton of CO2. And power sector, the per unit cost of abating CO2 is the maximum for the power sector, which is 66, steel 53, and cement 49. Let me also point out here that all these 9 emerging market economies, they constitute something like 30% of global GDP and 30% of global carbon emissions and 50% of the carbon emission in the 9 emerging market economies. Now, we have also, Mr. Khalid had raised the issue of financing. We have also included MDBs, like how much MDBs could finance climate finance in these 9 emerging market economies. Let me point it out here that of the total climate finance which is extended by MDBs, almost 40% still goes to high middle income countries, only 60% goes to low middle income countries. And their total climate finance to 9 emerging market economies was only 20 billion US dollars in 2023, which is projected to rise. We have made projection and we find it will go to something like 31 billion US dollar in 2030. So that means it will meet the requirement of emerging market economies, something like 9 to 10% of their total requirement. Of course, if you exclude China, because China's finance requirements are huge. China alone needs something like 800 1.3 trillion US dollar of the total requirement of 202 trillion US dollar. China needs 1.3 or 1.4 trillion US dollar. So other emerging market economies need only something like 854 billion US dollar. So China in any case is a large economy, by far the largest emerging market economy. And I don't think it would need any funding from other external sources, even including MDBs. But now let me come to the other point which Mr. Khalid also raised. See, total funding which has come to all emerging and developing market economies so far, is less than 250 billion US dollar every year. And the promise which developed countries made at Copenhagen, that they would give 100 billion US dollar every year. So that commitment was met only something in 22 or 23. Of course, they have now increased the commitment, but it remains to be seen how far they will be able to meet that commitment. So if you include the commitment from the developed economies to developing and emerging market economies and the resources which MDBs have, and you can also include the other official channel like RST, which is instituted by the IMF, then what we are talking about is something like 250 billion US dollar at the most. Let me also point out that, by the way, in the case of RST, 100 billion US SDRs were required to be rechanneled, and developed countries had made commitment because they don't need SDRs. They are sitting on large idle, I would say, SDRs. But the total commitment which came to IMF was only 47 billion US dollar, of which disbursement has been only 7 to 8 billion US dollar. So at the most, what we are talking about is 250 billion US dollar every year. And when the requirement, even though our requirement is much lower, but still it is large, I would say, much lower than many other studies have estimated, but still quite large. And let me tell you that somebody was giving Bangladesh number. So we have been receiving only something like 8 billion US dollar from all sources put together every year. So even our requirement is as of now, even reduced estimates. So because this, whatever our requirement is, it doesn't cover full economy. It covers something like 50% of the total carbon emissions. But even of that requirement, something like 55 billion US dollar, which we need, we get only 7 to 8 billion US dollar. I would stop it here. And if time permits, I will try to address your question little later. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raj. I think, yes, I will come back to you on the reform thing again, if you could shed a bit light on that. But I will go to now, we are talking about public finance, and there are concerns about governance issues. I would like to go to Professor Dr. Shah Mohammad Hassan Habib, sir. If you could, from your perspective, I know that you are a prolific researcher in this domain, particularly the broader financial sector. So what kind of financial sector policy reforms you think the government should be opting for, and what current gaps you see, not only with the government, but also within the private sector as well. So if you could gradually move into the private sector as well in your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting. First, let me start with a comment that we are talking about financing gap. So is it gap between demand and supply, or desire and supply? It is basically gap between desire and supply. Desire and demand is different. If we want financing, we have to prove that we need that fund. We have got the actionable project. We can do it. The outcome is visible. Even in many cases, central bank is having fund, but there is no demand. If you say, do we need more fund? Yes, we need this much. But do you have any kind of application? Can you prove that, yes, we need that? I mean, so many things are not actionable. Nowadays, our estimations are basically desires, you see. It's not demand. So practically, if we want to draw finance within the country or from outside country, we have to design project. We have to prove that we need fund, these are actionable. This is a truly demand. So I personally believe there is a gap. If you want to design something, if you want to go for reforms, we need to primarily first work on that. We have to prove to the global community, to the central bank, to the policymakers, to the uh, 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 public authority that yes, there are proven evidence that these are actionable projects. We can implement this, and outcome is truly, truly visible. So there is a gap, I believe. So gap has to be between demand and supply, not desire and supply. This is one important thing. Second is, if you see from the global perspective, then for financing mitigation, banks have got a role, no doubt about that. But for adaptation, we need concessional fund, we need grants, we need fund from the budget itself. Fine. But who will be implementing all those projects? If you want to bring private sector also, then who will be implementing all those? If you consider from global perspective, you cannot match our financial sector there. We are different. Please consider our financial sector. In Bangladesh, different from all other global economies, our banks are doing everything. Commercial banks are the sources of short-term, medium-term, and long-term financing. If you see, globally, if you ask anybody, the commercial bank will be offering long-term financing, infrastructure financing. Anywhere in the world, people will be saying that, what are you saying? How come banks will be doing that? They will be confronting asset liability mismatch. But see, in Bangladesh, in all banks' portfolio check, most of the financing are long-term financing. You go to the net will be saying that, ChatGPT will be saying that, who is the regulator of money market in Bangladesh? Central bank. Who is the regulator of capital market? They will be saying Securities and Exchange Commission. Let me tell you, in Bangladesh, our money market regulator is Bangladesh Bank, our capital market regulator is Bangladesh Bank only. Most of the financing are coming from banking industry. So whatever strategy you are formulating, central bank has to be there. Banking channel must be there. See our strength in formulating any kind of climate financing policies. We have got two pillars, you cannot deny. Despite all the difficulties, commercial banks are the strongest pillar in Bangladesh. You cannot deny. So, in the process of formulating the policy, you have to bring central bank on board. Because all the long-term financing must be channeled through commercial banks. You see what commercial banks in doing Bangladesh. They are providing long-term financing, short-term financing, they are providing insurance, even startup financing. They are doing everything. We are forced to do so. So we cannot have a kind of, okay, America is following this in the process of climate financing, so let us follow here. No, you have to bring commercial bank on board and central bank on board for this, whatever may be the strategy. This is one, and another is our powerful pillar is MFIs, microfinancial institutions. In the rural financing, they're doing a lot. So we need these two pillars. And one is your banks, commercial banks, and another is microfinancial institutions. That strategy may not match with any other global economies. These are our strength. So we have to use these two pillars. This is one. All right. Now, see, okay, that is not directly relevant, but still I'm saying ESG. If I talk about ESG in the context of America, probably I'll be talking about only environmental issues, because inclusion is not their concern. They have got good governance. But in the context of Bangladesh, if I talk about ESG, climate, anything, at the same time I have to talk about inclusion as well, financial inclusion. I have to talk about my governance problem. We are talking about something green, am I right? Green finance. What is the status of your regular finance? You are talking about the toppings of the cake. Do we have the right kind of cake? In Bangladesh, we don't have bond market. Central bank they came up with green bond policy. They're trying, but we don't have bond market. It's not easy. We don't have capital market. So our all strategy should be centered around, I personally believe, commercial bank at this moment at least, and MFI, customized strategy. And central bank has to play much bigger role in the climate financing. I don't think central bank is truly coordinated with the national public authority. They're thinking like developed countries, the way they are implementing projects. No. We need to implement, in Bangladesh, we need to implement all those long-term projects through commercial banks only. It's our style. We are forced. It's our strategy. We don't have any option practically. Then about SMEs, they need fund. And if you use SME channel, if you can promote SMEs, then cluster could be an approach. And you know, cluster financing, the way we are doing cluster financing, that is not truly cluster financing. In between, we have one thing, that is cluster development. And I personally believe we may draw a fund as part of national strategy to develop green clusters so that commercial bank can come up and finance them. Through green clusters, we may handle two problems together. One is the problem of financial inclusion, at the same time the problem of the gap of climate finance. We can address both the things together. Even we need to bring these climate finance issues very strongly as part of our national financial inclusion strategy too. Because collectively it's not a single document simply. Because you cannot consider climate finance separately. Out of the overall approach of sustainable financing platform. Place that pillar within the overall approach. It is all about E plus S plus G. So integrate all those strategies together while preparing your national strategy for climate financing. That is very, very important. So at this stage, that is my comment. If you come up with anything, I'll be answering.
Thank you very much. I think it's really critical. We are looking forward to the first national climate finance strategy next year, hopefully. But there, in relation to what you said, there are also a lot of complaints. Yes, central bank is doing a lot, but probably not the commercial banks. There are a lot of complaints that when people go to the commercial banks to access green funds, they can't access the green funds, particularly the SMEs. Because of operational challenges, kind of negligence, there are serious problems on there. And I don't know, there are more complaints about the foreign commercial banks. So we have HSBC here. I'd like to move on to her. Actually, are you really doing it correctly? Rightly, with the right approach? Are you really prioritizing green finance? And I have two questions more. And second question is, there is always the risk of greenwashing. So when you lend green finance, we have concerns as academics that the projects are actually not green. In the SRM checklist, you can make everything green if you want, because you are giving the money, you are doing the rating, which is a conflict of interest. So how do you look at it, and do you try to do the right thing? And the third question is, how do you think commercial banks can really play much better role in mobilizing climate finance for the nation? Over to you, Ms. Afzalun Nasa from HSBC.
Thank you. I hope I can answer all your questions. The thing is, firstly, I would say thanks to Bangladesh Bank, because we have these schemes, and the schemes are in demand as well. So low-cost funding is helpful. Secondly, going forward, transition is important as an international bank for us, and we do support. And I will give you some examples on the products we have. One thing that is sustainability-linked loan that we usually link one of the indicators. It can be any of the ESG indicators. It can be renewable energy installation. It can be social indicators as well, women in leadership roles and others as well. So we do have products. We do provide financing as well. And if I just look back on the NDC and the requirement of it as well, I only we see that textile and garments industry, as we have done some intensive research on it by Apparel Impact Institute, so we have a study on decarbonization finance. So by 2030, the apparel industry itself will be needing 4.8 billion USD. And apart from that, excluding all the schemes available by Bangladesh Bank or other schemes which are available on the renewable energy aspect. So going forward, the report suggests that blended finance model, supplier guarantees will be helpful. And guarantees can play a very important role in scope of other financing. And I would agree with Asan Habib sir on the SME sector cluster financing. That is a very good proposition. And we do support microfinance institution with our financing as well. On other remarks, business model which has been proposed by Mr. Mahfuzul Haq, that is more of a viable option. In case if there is a rate of return, there will be payback for the loans as well. So in scope of business, having a business model can be helpful. And apart from that, I will be sharing some of our experience from the agriculture sector on adaptation and creating a business model through that. So this is part of a philanthropic support that we do. So, so we have a project based on soybean. And so we created the project in a salinity intrusion area. And now what is happening is we have Nourish, who is further investing it as a private sector for their poultry farms and others. So as we can see, salinity intrusion itself is a climate change impact. We are creating a business model with investment from the private sector itself for creating their own supply chain. We also have a demand for edamame for a Japanese product, which will be exported coming year as well as part of the production. So this business model will actually be helpful in case we are also thinking of road and infrastructure as well. In scope, I can give an example of Nikli Hauer. The water is dry during the winter season, and there we have water during the summer. And there's a road that goes in between, built by one of the international organizations. And it's, I would say, it's one of the road to bring back crops, especially rice. And that is a sustainable infrastructure. So investment as a sustainable infrastructure would mean a lot for the country itself. To your question, yes, we have the sustainable finance policy. We have strong backup by Bangladesh Bank on setting up targets. We have, I would say, Liaquat sir, and it all started with Moshad Millah sir itself. There is a strong force, I would say, for the banking sector to provide financing for the institutions as well. So for mitigation aspect, there is a roadmap that can be formed further, especially the way NDC proposes, the proposed NDC, there are sectors here. So usually previous NDCs didn't cover these sectors, I would say. So maybe next step would be to analyze the financing for and developing the policies for these sectors as well, so that there's demand led from the sectors. Because as you can see from the apparel sector, there's a demand led. But from other sectors like high emitting sectors, as mentioned by previous speaker from India as well, like there can be steel, cement. If there's a drive for mitigation, that can be helpful. And we can see from NDC, like energy is one of the key emitting sectors. And the speaker has mentioned, if we produce with renewables, our costs will further decrease and it'll be more sustainable for us. Thank you.
Yeah, but as I was referring to the greenwashing risk, so how do you
So
look at it?
greenwashing.
Not specific to HSBC, but in general, in private sector bank financing, greenwashing is a risk. I would like to have your remarks on that. And also, do you think commercial banks are really doing well? I mean, in terms of climate finance or green finance mobilization, how do you look at this sector from your view?
I will only mention about HSBC's green financing. It's very hard to judge other banks. So greenwashing and green, there's also green hushing. So if you're doing and not saying is also called green hushing. For green finance, I would say there is not like you are just financing for the sake of it. There's a proof of document required. And for example, there is there are engineers in Shredder who verifies the documents for especially for renewable energy projects and energy efficiency machineries as well, and in case of any kind of infrastructure which is energy efficient. So it's not only that there's a third party verification, and we have examples of it.
Yep.
And apart from that, if I say sustainability linked loan that we have, we compare, in case it's a water saving, we compare with the water bills. If there's a electricity saving, we compare with electricity bills. So there are tangible documents, because without that, it's actually greenwashing. There has to be tangible, valuable documents to tag it as sustainable finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, so it's now time to move to the man with whom everything started, actually, our respected Murshid Millat Bhai. So, do you think, how do you evaluate now? Now you are an external to central bank. You're not part of the central bank. You need to criticize central bank now more. Is the central bank doing enough, and what more it can do to mobilize greater private capital for climate action? And from your long experience of working with the multilateral development banks, how do you also look at their performance, their commitment, and what more we can do to convince them to do more for us? So if you could please speak up.
Thank you for inviting. In fact, Central Bank, the Bangladesh Bank, has been so passionate since 2008, with introducing the, what I could say, the climate, the CSR, mainstreaming the CSR activities for the banks in June 2008. And they are on, the green banking policy, the environmental risk management, then in 2011, then in 2017, environmental and social risk management guidelines for the banks and finance companies. In the 22, it's environmental social risk management with 10 sector specific sector guidelines for the most vulnerable sectors with the severity in pollution. What I would say that central bank, compared to other central banks in the globe, Bangladesh Bank has done much more. And banks, a community in Bangladesh need to be very lucky and fortunate enough that they have this sort of central bank in the country. But if you see that central bank's policy, I would concentrate on the policy, because you see that SME policy, and I will be with Hassan Bhai in a sense that the global context and Bangladesh context is not the same. If you talk about SME for the global approach, a medium enterprise, the definition is there, and the definition of medium enterprise in Bangladesh is quite different. This is number one. So you can define, you can match this together, the very definition of cottage, micro, small and medium enterprise with the global approach. Now come to this, our arena, that me as a SME entrepreneur, I never know in which subsector I belong to, whether I belong to cottage, whether I belong to micro, whether I belong to small, whether I belong to medium, because the very definition of the Ministry of Industry, and accordingly the SME SPD department, Special Programs Department, the definitions, the whole SME sector, they never know in which the sector, subsector they belong to. So once they come with the banks for their access to finance, they can't know, they never know how much limit they are allowed to go for. They never know. And also the problem is that the Bangladesh Bank, the central bank, has circulated in their supply side a lot of circulars, guidance, blessings for the SME sector. but it's never been clicked. Why? Because there is a gap between the policy and practice. You see, from the definition it is one. The other one is that once a women entrepreneur comes to access to finance from a bank, everything is ready with all this. Now they are discouraged that they don't have collateral. They don't have personal guarantee. Now come to the collateral. There is Bangladesh Bank circular from the Credit Guarantee Department that in the sustainability rating methodology, the banks who are in the top rated banks, their clients, once those banks have the eligibility criteria to reach an agreement with the Credit Guarantee Department of Bangladesh Bank to facilitate their clients with respect to personal guarantee and collateral. It is there, but we never know, and the entrepreneur never know. And the banks should encourage the entrepreneurs to in accessing the fund, whether if they are the borrowers of the good banks with good asset quality. So those entrepreneurs of the good banks, they will have the advantage to go for the collateral free loan and personal guarantee free loan with what I could say that the banks, they will be in a more comfort zone to facilitate those entrepreneurs, because having the Bangladesh Bank Credit Guarantee Department will give personal guarantee on behalf of their clients. So it is unknown. So I think access to finance is a problem in Bangladesh, but the knowledge gap, the information gap is the biggest problem. This is number one. And number two is that Bangladesh Bank, climate finance is the issue, and Bangladesh Bank, I think Bangladesh Bank is close to the circulation of climate finance policy. But first of all, in a country, the national climate finance policy should come first. Then Bangladesh Bank, in context with that, they will formulate the policy for the banks and finance companies. But our national finance policy is being delayed, but Bangladesh Bank is not waiting for that. They are trying hard to formulate this policy, at least for the banks and finance companies. Now come to the banks. Banks are encouraged to finance to the climate mitigation project, not the adaptation, because they have the limitation with their fund. Because the adaptation projects, they are with the big exposures, where banks are not in a comfort zone to participate there. Because the climate adaptation funds, they are huge funds, and in our share, if we look at if it is 50-50, it would not be justified. The climate adaptation has to be 75 or mitigation 25 or 20%. It should be like that, but it's not there. Now come to the banks, that how banks could get involved in the very process, in the blended finance, or with the development partners, or with the MDBs, how they will get involved, because they are not in a position to do so, because their share with the exposure limit also is a factor. But if they can go with their own for a climate action projects with respect to adaptation, some 4, 5, 6 banks have to get together with a lead bank there to contribute to. But and again, they should depend on a climate finance policy, which will come up soon. Then they will be more comfort zone to do so. And apart from that, if they would like to go under blended finance or with the development partners, then it is also banks are not in a very comfort zone to do that. And the other point is that with respect to our access to green climate fund, there have to be capacity building, acquaintancy. Those will access those funds. Then those will be, how could I say, that bridging or generated to the banks to get involved. Now you are telling that central bank's approach, they are very much positive. And some things also are there to look into more, that central bank has given the target for green finance. Say I am a bank, central bank has given me the target that you will have to have 5% of your total outstanding to green finance. Then I will say, yes, I will go for that. But will never ever contribute to renewable energy. I will never ever contribute to waste management. I will contribute to some other projects where the socio-economic impact is not very visible. So if Bangladesh Bank could do that, you should contribute to this sort of percentage to that arena, or at least they should have some moral suasion like that. You should to contribute more to renewable energy, more to clean transportation, more to waste management, more to green buildings, establishments. Then, because in our country, banks are like that. Whatever the Ministry of Finance or whatever the government is steering, until unless the Bangladesh Bank instructs something to the banks, they never ever move to that. So that is the ultimate scenario. So in our arena, we should think on the Bangladesh perspective, and very rightly, we are very unfortunate that we don't have a national database, structured database, unified database on CMSME. You see, if there could be a database, we have a database on CMSME. What is that? Rohima Khatun. What he does, Butik Batik. Where she lives, Mohammadpur. Is this a database? Banks can't do nothing with that. So there should be a database, their credibility, their financials, their network, their experience, everything has to be there in the database. And who is responsible for doing this database? The SME foundations, I talked to them, they are not in a position to go for this database. So who will do that? SME and Special Program Development Bangladesh Bank, they said this is the task of SME Foundation. So there is no structured, unified database for SMEs, for entrepreneurs, for suppliers, supervisors, and those are the players involved in the climate financing. So there must be a structured database that can help out, that can minimize the information gap, and banks and finance companies would be in a more comfort zone to contribute to the entrepreneurs, because they are very much aware of the very data of the potential borrowers. So that is one, and I don't find the documentation is a challenge, because who will prepare the documentation, they will have some minimum charge. If you go, as HSBC said earlier, that Bangladesh Bank has some low-cost funding facilities. So if you go for 13 to 14% or 12%, instead of that, you are having 7%, 7% in SME, and for women it is 5%, and in the green finance it is 5%. So from 12 to 5% or 7%, the entrepreneur is going to have facility, so they can 0.15% or 0.20% to the service providers who are arranging documentation for them. So it is pre-disbursement. Then post-disbursement for the asset quality, then those service providers, they will, after post-disbursement, they will do it for the banks, and they will have some commissions from the banks. So from pre-disbursement, commission from the entrepreneurs, post-disbursement from the commissions from the bankers. Because if they don't have structure, establishment, and also, so they can have this sort of facilities other than software arrangement. So I think technological advancement is there, so it can be best utilized. The fund is there, fund is not a problem, but the very utilization of very fund and the effective application, those things are very much needed, and Bangladesh Bank, the central bank is well concerned, but all these things will come up once the climate finance policy issued by Bangladesh Bank, which is expected soon, and that is there. And the other part is that suppliers, supervisors, service providers, they are ready to serve for some sort of commission. So I don't find that access to finance is a problem anywhere. Who says that documentation is a challenge? Who says that personal guarantee is a challenge? Who says that collateral free is a challenge? So my question from your question, I would like to answer. The central bank is very positive, very facilitating, and it's a very good central bank for the bankers. And I feel that those should be the unfortunate bankers who can't avail of these opportunities the central bank has kept for them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Miladhai. So we would like to move to our current director of the Sustainable Finance Department with all the compliments. So we see that the current sustainable finance policy and the green bond policy are more aligned to mitigation. So we need more finance toward adaptation particularly. So my question to you, how the central bank is going to address this gap where it's kind of surprising that the nation needs more finance for adaptation, but banks are completely aligned with mitigation. So how actually central bank is taking care of this agenda? And the second question is, I had an informal capacity, I had a discussion with the BGMEA, and they expressed the same concern as Milad Bhai said. Most of their SME RMGs, they don't have any idea what kind of financing schemes are available within the banks. So why is there a lack of communication? It's not miscommunication, it's that people don't know the things that you have done for them. So what the central bank can do actually to address this gap. Thank you. Mr. Chaudhry Liaquat Ali, Director, Sustainable Finance Department, Bangladesh Bank.
Thank you very much, Shovarnada. At first, actually, I take the opportunity to discuss regarding the issue raised by our Honorable Professor of BIBM, Mr. Hasan Habib sir. Desire, demand, and the supply side of the desire and demand of the government. Actually, this is our desire or demand. Actually, objective of the Bangladesh Bank is that to create demand against the desire of the government. That's why actually we are giving some policies or the policy support to the government. As you see the National Adaptation Plan, what is the actually financing gap? Government desires $230 billion by 2030. So how can the industry actually give the support to the government? Because this is not possible by alone government to intervening the 113 projects to implement the National Adaptation Plan. That's why Bangladesh Bank actually come forward to give the support to the government. How we actually work for supporting the government? We revisited our sustainable finance policy in the year 2023. In the previous sustainable finance policy, we include only the two taxonomy, that is the sustainable finance taxonomy and green finance taxonomy. In aligning with the National Adaptation Plan, we again include in our taxonomy another one taxonomy. This is the climate finance taxonomy, and also we giving the lending quota to the bank and finance company to fostering the sustainable finance, green finance, as well as the climate finance. And we increase our lending quota. Now, bank and finance company should disburse 40% of the total net outstanding of the previous year should be disbursed as the sustainable finance. And 5% of the previous year net outstanding should be the green finance. And again, actually, when we go for an impact study, where we see that actually bank and finance company participations in the SME or the Oman land business very few in the arena of the green finance. That's why we given the lending quota to the bank and finance company. Out of the 5% of the green finance, 20% should be the Oman land business, and that means that 20% of the 5%, and 25% of the 5% should be the CMSME. So, if you go to the our recent data, I would like to share you that in the year 2025, that means as the end of the June, that is industry outstanding green finance outstanding out of the total around 5%. And as of June 2025, near about 34% of the sustainable finance out of the total outstanding. So this is our achievement and also vibrant our industries. And another one is thing that where actually discuss our honorable moderator and the banks also, the greenwashings. How could we actually minimize the greenwashings? You go through the EU taxonomy. What you see, they follow the TSC, technical screening criteria method. But for minimizing the greenwashings, we follow the whitelist approach. We clearly define the green finance and we give the green products and also the green sectors. So this is the, and also for easier of the finance people to take decisions for the green finance. And another one is the, already our Milla sir said, the ESRM guidelines. We include in the ESRM guidelines ESDD checklist. Actually, every bank and finance company should comply with the ESDD checklist before taking the lending decision. From the multilateral development banks, all the also the IFIs, International Finance raises some questions regarding our ESDD checklist, so that actually now we are working on modifying or to again review our ESDD policy. And another one is that the renewable energy sectors. Our Motion Milla sir already said that they actually our policy initiative is not much for the exploring the renewable. As all of we know that government already targeted the 30% of the power from the renewable sources. And Bangladesh Bank also aligned with the government policy because a lot of money being paid for import of the fossil fuels. That's why government already was established a task force committee led by our deputy governor. I am the member of this task force. Already, this task force actually established for the grid connected renewable power plant. Already we gave some recommendations on behalf of the task force. Number one recommendations is the government should impose the 20% of the total power should be from the renewable energy sources. And government review it, our recommendations, so far within the zone, they will implement these recommendations. And another one is this, we give the recommendations to develop the merchant power policy for the renewable project and also the ESCO model policy. Already government most probably circulated the merchant power policy 1 week back. So our recommendation taking into consideration by the government and they're trying to implement those. So if once our recommendations is implemented, there is a huge opportunity to financing in this renewable energy arena. So actually what Bangladesh Bank, I said earlier, to create the demands, our objectives, and also the engaging the private sector in this arena, like as the climate financing, green financing, renewables like that. And another one is the, as all of you know that, we always to prepare our financial industry because the CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism is coming. Already EU and the UK should impose the carbon tax against some sectors, just like as cement, steel, but not include in the apparel countries. There is a lack for our country because we are the leading export countries in the apparel sectors. So there is the lack. But this will be changed within the most probably 2030. So we are actually preparing our financial industry to combat against some sort of regulations. And another one is we, as all of you know, that we are adopting the climate and sustainability reporting, the IFRS S1 and S2, as to completely the climate-related financial disclosure. So why we actually adopting this IFRS S1 and S2? Our main objective is that to engage our private sectors and to attract the foreign investors and to attract the global climate funds. So, but there are some challenges for disclose the financial disclosure in their balance sheet, because the capability or the capacity, because this is the new, especially we are facing challenging the carbon emission, that means the finance emission calculation. This is very much challenging, because every bank and finance company at first should target, and then they achieve their target. How they achieve their target, this is our main challenging. And another one is that blended finance. Yes, this is very much needed in our country in terms of the low-cost fund and the grant. So we are trying to work on the development partners as well as the climate-related global fund for bringing the blended finance in this arena. And last one is the climate finance actually needed very much low-cost finance due to non-bankable products. That's why private sector doesn't interest to finance in those areas. But we are rigorously encouraging for the to the bank and finance. How could we encourage? We have given instructions. The 10% of the total CSR budget should keep in the climate risk fund, and we clearly define and management procedure of the CRF. So every bank and finance company should desire to finance in this arena at a low cost. They use the CRF fund for subsidizing the interest. So this is our achievement. Now we actually working on the green credit guarantee scheme for the especially the SME and the CMSME sectors. And just I would like to share that our Miller sir said that a lot of shortcomings or challenges in the CMSE. But in 2 or 3 months back, actually, our SME SPD department has circulated the revised master circular, where they mention the personal guarantee purpose or the proprietor. There is some relaxations in the SME policies. And lastly, I would like to say that we are actually working on especially to encourage the private sector by the bank and finance company. Now we are working on the climate guarantee scheme, climate financing policies, so on. And also there is one thing I would like to share you, that there is a potentiality of the carbon trading. That's why we are working on to develop the carbon trading policy for the banks and finance companies. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but tell about some loss and damage from Bangladesh banks.
Oh, okay. And loss and damage also actually practicing from the CRF. We clearly define and how they manage this fund and how what sectors they implement this financing. If you awareness event, if you like the loss and damage, and also the low cost fund to so everything should be from the climate risk fund. Thank you very much.
Should I ask one thing?
Please.
Why the banks are not considering compliance risk as their risk in Bangladesh? Because when they are not complying with your regulations, what kind of penalty and punishment that you have for them? Because they have positive incentive, but we have never heard about any kind of strong negative incentive that because not complying with something that they are penalized. Do you have anything really?
Thank you very much. Actually, we didn't give any punitive actions right now because our finance sector is growing up, especially the sustainable finance and the green finance. But we give an opportunity. That is, we actually, how could I say, this is, we give the indirect financial incentives. That is our sustainability rating. Because we rated every banks and the finance company in each year, and those who are the top rated bank in the rating, we disclose their name in our website. That's why every banks and finance company to run off, how could they see their positions in our disclosure point? I already see that this year we first actually disclose the position of the bank, because now the first position of the Citibank. Just I heard from the Citibank MDU, after the disclosing the rating, their deposit growth increased by 200%. So this is our achievement. So we are trying, but not this punitive actions not taking this now, but we are thinking when we go up to the 50% of the sustainable finance in our industry, then we go for the punitive actions against the non-compliance of the bank and finance company.
But
Thank you.
what about adaptation, sir? Are you working on realigning your sustainable finance policy, green bond policy with adaptation to facilitate more private sector investment?
Thank you very much. Actually, we working, very rightly questions. We have already, our Subarnoda and our Habib sir already said, we have the green bond policy, but this bond policy not actually operationalized till now. Though we will actually give in the year 20. Now we are working on the green bond policy in aligning with the national adaptation policy. How could we actually align the adaptation projects in the bond policy? So we are already 70 to 80% work is done. So soon we actually disclose our revised green bond policy. And one thing is that Hasan Habib sir already said this. There is a major challenges in our bank and finance company. They deal with the short-term liabilities, but invest in the longer terms. So green bond is the most opportunity to raise the fund, longer fund, for issuing that bond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've got a lot of updates, so we are expecting more private adaptation capital financing in the coming days. But now it's a time for looking at whether the financing we are already mobilizing in terms of adaptation, mitigation. We don't have any estimates of loss and damage, how much we actually mobilize now. But for adaptation and mitigation, whatever we are doing, actually how effective they are, the question has already been raised in this discussion. So, and also there are concerns that a lot of foreign funds we are getting, we are more becoming debt dependent, and there have been serious studies done by Change Initiative. We have a representative from Change Initiative, Mr. Mufazzal Hussain. Should you please come up actually on the agenda that the international finance we are accessing now, we are using now, how to what extent they actually serve the equity principle. And from your research perspective, is it really promoting inequality and injustice more, or how do you look at this agenda, and what kind of policy you think the government can pursue or opt for in preventing climate finance injustice or equity as a result of over-reliance on debt and maybe other contractual measures? Please, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Borua. It's been an honor to be in this panel. I heard the discussion on why the commercial banks should be prioritizing the climate finance. But before jumping into the discussion on that, I would like to address one thing that we often forget that adaptation projects are basically one kind of public goods. And why at the first place commercial banks and any kind of profit-making organization should any kind of profit-making organization should finance the public goods? It's duty of a public institution, or it's a duty for government to come up with a public finance fund to finance the public goods projects related to public goods, because it's basically it's common goods. In economics, we often say the tragedy of commons is not a tragedy; it's a tragedy for all. But this is the irony is we forgot that the tragedy of commons is tragedy for us too. So when a climate change start to affect the economy and the society, nobody is left behind. As we already discussed, when maybe the first speaker said, when someone walk by the street, the air pollution never. There is no boishomo. It's the citizen is from developed country or it's from Bangladesh. So what's the fundamental problem, in my opinion, lies in this international climate finance is they are using the climate finance as a strategic and political tools instead of as a justice and equity tools. So there's a huge justice and equity gap in international climate finance. In economics, but from the perspective of economics, we always it's not we, actually the OECD countries, they use the bargaining power to finance the LDC countries. So what's the problem lying there is they are using it's as a bargaining tool and a political and strategic tool. They're committing us that well, we will finance you guys in to mitigate and adapt with the climate change, but they are giving it as loans. A Change Initiative did a study, published a study this month, that Bangladesh has per capita climate debt of $80. We have approximately $485 per capita debt in total, whereas approximately $80 per capita loan is for climate change. So we are not supposed to bear this burden. We, as an LDC country, we are supposed to receive loans and grants, but we are receiving debt. Approximately 70% of our total climate fund is debt. So it's a huge inequality and injustice issue. Second thing I would say, the climate finance we are receiving, it is suffering from a huge misattribution, or you may say it's mistaking. As per our analysis, 18.7% of total climate finance is attributed to the fossil fuel projects. You see, we are receiving loans instead of grants, and the loans we are receiving, we are also using it in fossil fuel projects, which were not supposed to go to the fossil fuel based project. It was supposed to go to the climate and green projects. So that is a triple burden. First burden is we are affecting from the climate change. Second burden is we are suffering, we are burdening from debt, and third burden is we are also we are attributing it to the we are channeling the fund to the fossil fuel based projects, which are damaging, which is multiplying the climate change effect in our economy. So if I tell that, as you asked, if it's justice or inequality, of course it's an inequality and justice issue. It doesn't align with the justice principle, because when I am the sufferer, and the suffering is not my fault. It's the top emitters who are emitting the carbon, who are emitting the greenhouse gas, and that's why the LDC countries, the countries like Bangladesh, who are at the very challenge to even get flooded by the sea level rise by the 2050, and they are giving us debt. So it's a very, I would say, it's a very calculative approach to make the LDC countries to fall in debt burden. This is the first one.
What kind of policy you think the government should look for in preventing this kind of, what the government can do actually?
Well, in terms of international finance, there is a least to do from government, since it's all about the bargaining power in international climate finance platform. We don't have that much of bargaining power to bargain with America or China or Brazil or Russia. But what we can do, what Bangladesh can do, Bangladesh can act as a representative for the LDC countries group. You see, the LDC don't have any voice. So Bangladesh can act as a voice of LDC for Bangladesh and as well for the other countries in LDC to bargain with the other countries. But the outcome will depend on how the international communities will cooperate with us. In terms of our local policy, in terms of domestic policy, I would say, there's a huge opportunity for blended finance. As most of us has said, Bangladesh has Zakat potential of approximately 27,000 crores per year, which is a huge potential to finance in the adaptation and mitigation sector as well. And it won't create any public finance or any kind of fiscal burden as well, because we are not taking loans. These 27,000 crore or approximately 25,000 crore funds are releasing every year through the informal channels. But if the Central Zakat Management Board or Central Zakat Fund or any kind of government agency just channelize this fund to the public financial management, so these you see that these kind of policy reform in public finance governance or public financial management system would create a breathing space. I won't say it will replace the need or desire or demand for financing, but it would create a breathing space for government to finance the adaptation funds as a public goods. So in terms of mitigation, I would say private finance would be the best or possible option. Bangladesh Bank has initiated the green bond policy, and as far as I know, Bangladesh Bank already designed a green bond, but unfortunately, it's not in the market yet. As Asana Bibsa said, we don't have a bond market. But if you see, we have a huge number of citizens who are living outside the Bangladeshi diaspora. If we can issue a dollar-denominated bond, which can be used to raise the funds and finance the climate change mitigation and adaptation projects or any kind of green project, it would create another breathing space for us. Since in last COP, the USA already got out from the Paris Agreement, so there is a limited scope that we will get enough fund for climate finance. So we can't wait and rely on the funds international community will channel to us, but we have to create our own kind of backbone and own kind of financial system. So we have opportunity for blended finance, we have opportunity for a dollar denominating green bond or any kind of a bond, and also we have the potential to issue green tokenized bond, I would say. One problem Mr. Mahfouz Haq already said, there is a problem in channeling the public fund to the climate finance is we can't track it. But in current scenario, I would say if we just use the tokenization, any kind of tokenization, maybe the tokenized bond or any kind of tokenized fund, or we use the decentralized financial approach, we can easily track down how much fund is releasing, where it's going, how we are utilizing it, and what's the economic and environmental impact. Ms. Syed Afzal Nessa said the bank has the priority. Since banks are running on others' money from the deposit, so bank has the little scope to channel their fund without any return on investment. But if we can tokenize it, we can easily track down, and we can also assess the impact it's creating from the perspective of economics and both an environment. Why? If we just see in what kind of financial benefits the fund is generating, it might mislead us, because maybe since it's a public good, adaptation is a public good, and investing in mitigation might take more time to generate return. So from finance perspective, it might not be useful or profitable as we expect. But if we assess it from an economic impact, it will be profitable. Why? It may not have direct return on the investment, but from the for long term, if financing to the adaptation and mitigation project, for long term the benefit it's creating, it might cushion us. It might cushion the economy in the longer term. So we should shift also, as you asked, what kind of policy reform we should focus on. I would say we should shift from the economy or production based indicator of any kind of assessment. We should move to the justice-based indicator or well-being-based indicator. Instead of just calculating how much money it's generating, we should focus on how much impact it's creating, not the money it's generating. Because you see, West or OECD country has money, but they are not giving us. So money may not be the option in future. We should focus on impact rather than just the numbers, quantity over quality, I would say. So we should focus our shift from quantity to the impact. And last thing I would say is I will again come to the public financial management. As I already mentioned, it's our responsibility. It's my back, so I have to protect my back. I have to protect my people. Maybe the OECD countries might talk about human rights or any kind of rights, but nobody is talking about the natural rights. If Bangladesh get demolished or flooded by the sea level rise, so it will violate the natural rights of every living being to exist. So to protect the natural rights of every living being, not only the human being, the other animal or species as well, we must prioritize the natural rights, declaring the natural rights of every species in the economy, and then channelize our public funds to create the public goods, or to offer the public goods to the citizens and the economy, so that it will create a multiplier economic impact, which I believe might be useful and profitable in the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You said very nice things about actually what kind of metrics we should be using. I think the central bank also should take note of it. In fact, instead of looking at production based, instead we should probably prioritizing what impact it is being created, particularly for adaptation projects. That's really critical. But let me move to our last discussion today. Dr. Irandhati Pathiraja, Research Fellow from the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka. I'm not sure whether Dr. Pathiraja can hear us. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so you are the second last. In fact, we have a very critical question we have preserved for our last speaker. It's about transparency and governance issue. But before moving into that direction, just continuing from what what our change initiative representative was telling about, what kind of metrics you think should we be targeting, be the government or the private sector, in terms of climate investment or climate finance utilizations? This is one part. And the second part is, again, in terms of equity and justice principles. So do you think from the current allocation structure of climate finance across adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, are we doing the right thing? Over to you, Dr. Pathiraja.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, please
Okay.
go on.
Okay, yes. Actually, the questions are not clear to me. I couldn't hear properly.
Shall I
yes. Yes,
reiterate?
there's
Yeah,
an echo. Yeah.
it's echo.
Now-
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah. Okay.
So the first question is, what kind of metrics, effectiveness metrics, because there are concerns that climate finance is not well utilized, properly utilized. There are complaints of misutilizations. So what kind of metrics we can use, better metrics, for understanding effectiveness of climate finance utilizations from your perspective? That's one question. The second question is, in terms of financing allocations we currently are experiencing, maybe it would be same in Sri Lanka as well. Do you think that actually is aligned with equity principles and justice principles? So based on these two questions, if you could also suggest some policy reforms that the governments like in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh could opt for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think most of the points are discussed by the other panelists. So sharing the same economic conditions, as well as adaptive capacities from Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, as well as other South Asian countries, I guess. So we have the same situation in our country as well. So in Sri Lanka also we have actually mitigation finance in at an advanced level compared to the adaptation and loss and damage financing, because those are much formalized because of the demand created by the buyers for the industries, for the as explained, the apparel industry, tea, and other industries where the export destination required. So those requirements. Other than that, renewable energy sector. That's because of, as others explained, for the Bangladesh, that's also a requirement with the 70% of renewable energy requirement by 2030, and with aligning those and carbon footprint requirements from the exported products and sustainability requirements, that sector is developed and it is financed by the private sector as well. And the central bank has assisted with green taxonomy of the financing for them. Other than that, I think the issue is, as discussed, adaptation and the loss and damage financing, whether we are ready to utilize the loss and damage fund, and since which is established in 2023, that's something we have to explore. And other innovative financing mechanisms are also still investigating, for conservation, like debt for nature swaps, as well as carbon market, as well as carbon offsets are also there, and carbon credit schemes as well. I think for corruption is a common issue, so that improve the transparency, digitalization is one aspect we can introduce. So this is in debate and in initial discussions and implementation stage in Sri Lanka. So when it applies to the whole country, then that would be an advantage, like in minimizing what we experience now, like we discussed here, what happened to the in utilization the climate finance. 50% is like misused, right? I heard the Bangladesh is saying. So similar situation we observe in the South Asian countries, including Sri Lanka. So that would be an option. Other than that, yes, we know that as we discussed, we are not the emitters or who did who were the causal economies for this climate change, but still we have the responsibility, as well as I think we have some opportunities, because like if we take renewable energy sector, we have the opportunity to for our renewable energy sector development. It helps us to make our economies greener, as well as to cut down the costs and the import dependency on the energy sector. So I think with that, we need to be careful in selecting what sort of grants we should accept other than loans, because we are in a debt crisis and just recovering from that economic crisis issues. So we have to be careful to get assistance from the donor agents to less cost loans, as well as less risk where we don't need repayment and technical assistance. So that's what actually I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patiraja. Nicely said, actually. We probably have to more focus on quality than quantity. I think it's important to look at what we are accepting. And I often say that MDBs that finance us, they often have financing models that are not suitable for our country. But we are forced to accept them. And we have to now think about that because we are now getting gradually stronger economy, right? So we now probably have a better voice now. So things need to move. But one of the agenda you said corruption, transparency. Corruption is everywhere, like countries like in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh. So I think I will move on to our last speaker. But with the most important questions of all the discussions is to Mr. Sabidin Ibrahim, as a senior sub-editor from the Daily Banik Barta, the third pillar of the state. So are you happy with climate transparency, particularly climate finance transparency that we currently are experiencing, the state of transparency? Are you, there have been complaints of corruption as well. From media perspective, as the third pillar of the state, how do you look at it, and what role media has to play, or what are the challenges you see in ensuring quality implementation of climate projects and quality utilization of climate finance? Please, over to you.
As a last speaker, I will be very, very brief, and I'll speak in news highlights. I like news highlights. In 2020 and 2021, during the COVID period, the most watched shared content from Bangladesh was a rare tortoise species laying eggs, broadcasted by AFP. So you see, the global audience are aware of the climate change and impacts in Bangladesh. Uh, in our newspaper, we published a report a few years back regarding some areas in Khulna and coastal areas where women are suffering from ovary cancer and infertility. In some schools, there is less student. In some classes, single digit students are there. So we are suffering from climate problem. And in the last few years, as we see in Dhaka and other parts, terrible heat wave, maybe 76 years. Within 76, it was the biggest heat waves in Dhaka and some certain areas. It continued for 35 days. So it is real. So I think, as our fellow speaker from Stange Initiative said, we are living in Donald Trump era where deglobalization, liberalization is also compromised. So we cannot be dependent on foreign loans and grants. If grants, okay, that's good, but loans, we have to face. We are already debt driven, and we are in terrible debt trap as well. So I think we should focus on self-sufficiency and efficient public and private initiatives should come together, as we are already the victim of climate change. So we should come forward. Others may not come, but diplomatic efforts, as our fellow speaker said, we can partner with other climate vulnerable nations and raise our voice together. But decision should come from our own part, and efficient use of the money is a challenge in Bangladesh in regarding in any sector. There is some mismanagement, misuse of funds. So as a news person, we only questions, we regularly question the people, and we are lagging behind in renewable sectors. Recently, I talked with general secretary and spokesperson of a body representing renewable sector. They're saying they're frustrated with the government, that they're not finding any policy support from the government to flourish their renewable sectors. He worked in solar energy sector. So as our chief advisor envisioned very loftier ideas, 3 zeros. That's very interesting. but if you could get some short-term benefit or manifestations of this loftier goals, Bangladesh could have a much nice track for the future governments to will come. So I think challenges are there, and we need to carry it forward, and we need to do it ourselves mostly. And is the diplomacy is the solution for the global funds and grants and loans, but efficient use is also the question here in Bangladesh. That's all for today.
All right, thank you very much. So we are almost
If I may, sir. Sir, sure.
So we are coming back to all of you just for 1 minute each. If you have any final things to say, any suggestions, anything important that we could manifest in the report or the output we will be producing from this report. Yeah, please.
Okay, instead of saying anything in addition to what I already said, I would sincerely ask Chaudhry Liaquat Ali sir that Bangladesh Bank already had that initiative to launch a green board, if I'm not wrong, that what kind of challenges we are facing to launch it right at that moment, or that moment, or right at the moment. Would you sovereign green bond. So would you please shed lights on that, sir?
And this would be your last remark as well.
Actually, we are not encouraging the sovereign green bond. We are encouraging the private green bond, because I think, and also the Bangladesh Bank thinks, right now Bangladesh government not any positions to give the sovereign guarantee for issuing the bond. That's why we working on green bond operationalization by the help of the MIGA. They give some theory actually. How could this implement? They give the one theory. They give the guarantee in one state-owned organization that is called the ITCOL for by issuing the green bond for raising the fund. This fund actually kept as a seed money. Then ITCOL give the guarantee for banks and finance company for issuing the bond. Because already our Hasan Habib sir said that actually our not yet to be developed in our bond market, but in the meantime actually we see the two challenges. One is the certification cost, and second is the yield. Because if you go for the issuance for certification need, but we have till now we have no competent authority for giving the certifications. And another one is the yield, because in our market already interest rate is very high, but for the bond issuance it's maybe lower. This is the two challenges. So if we provide the guarantee for issuance the green bond, I think we think this could be solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an open floor, so if anybody has any last remarks to, sir.
Okay. Just 2-3 points. Number one is I would request central bank to use greater proportion of CSR fund to subsidize any kind of climate finance. Secondly, please come up with punitive actions, because simply positive incentive doesn't work. It's a combination of both positive and negative incentives. So that is very important, so that they understand. Other than foreign bank, they understand what is compliance risk. Other bank, they don't understand what is compliance risk. And another thing is that, to me, SME, don't go for CEM, SME, all this. See, SMEs, the term SME means they are weak. So identify the people that they are weak, and so treat them separately. Don't go for what is the meaning of CEM, SME? This is a signboard. So identify them clearly and finance them. And another about commercial bank. To me, commercial term does not go with the term bank. It's a public entity. So if you allow them to go for infrastructure financing, the commercial bank may finance, because they are public entity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think your second remark says that you are a professor. Always looking for punitive measures. So anyone else? Milad bhai, last remark, please.
I would emphasize on the unified structured database, no information gap, zero tolerance, and also what I could say that there should be some sort of policy in a sense. I would cite a live example, that is the remittance from Australia of $1 lakh is sitting idle at the hour end. The foreign exchange remittance is there for the Sustainable and Renewable Energy Associations. It's lying, and it's lying with the Minister of Finance and Bangladesh Bank. Nothing is working, so foreign exchange is not outwarding, it's coming. Only C form is needed. That what very purpose it has come. But it's for long 45 days. It's nothing, the result is there. So remittance is here, but we are not in a position to utilize that. So information gap, capacity building, and the very utilization of the fund effectively should be the prime agenda to address climate finance with respect to climate change adaptation, which is badly needed. Mitigation is all sort of solution is there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Afzalunasa, if you have any remarks.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
we discussed about the renewable energy landscape here. So there is merchant power plant policy. Already the gadget has been passed as well. So I guess it will be more easier for the renewable energy producers as well. And another thing, the sustainable finance landscape is evolving all the time. New things are coming up, new structures are coming up. So recently, the transition loans guide has come up as well.
Yeah.
So I would request, like in case we are revising the policy, so the transition loans guide as per Loan Market Association can be followed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe from TIB, yes, please.
Sorry. Just one point, I think that transparency, accountability, and integrity is very important here, being Transparency International guy. So I would suggest upholding the integrity issues in climate finance. So IMED, OCAG, and ACC has very important role in climate finance. Whatever the banks and whatever the financial institutes or other institutes comes in climate finance, they should be actually held accountable for any types of misdeed in climate finance. This is very important, and compliance is very important here. So national entities must play their role actually in climate finance. This is one area, and sorry, I'm taking a bit time. And another is that all the NCQG and our previous experience suggest that climate finance from international source will not come actually as we expect. So our house also actually passively suggesting that national sources should be actually utilized in for climate, and it must be actually integrated in regular development projects as well. So it's very important that we take this gesture from the international community that it's time to move forward by our own actually. Thank you very much.
Asad Bhai from UNDP, please.
Okay. One thing is I just want to reiterate here is the country preparation and the country interest is very high. Readiness is also very good, although I question in my deliberation. The reason why I'm telling is good is, as I mentioned, like government is very much proactively supporting, and UNDP is also working closely with the government in terms of all the areas in terms of the climate, budget tagging, tracking, as I said, allocation on the local level, and then also through IMED monitoring and as well as for climate auditing. So which also demonstrate that the country also wants to really further progress and make sure that best utilization of climate finance, which is very good. But as I mentioned in my deliberation also, like we need to go beyond like output, input tracking or outcome, I mean the metrics. Rather, we need to go for a kind of making sure that how we can make sure the resilience outcome and also like equity-based indicators, so that we can make sure that mitigation and adaptation, whatever areas we invest, we really go beyond like only like very much focused growth-based thing. Rather, other softer areas we need to incorporate. And my last point is We have very good macro level documents and plan, NAP, NDC, and many other documents that we can refer and already mentioned. Translating those into action is very important, and in this regard, the NAP we are working with the government for making sure how the NAP and the macro document can be vertically integrated in the local level through local adaptation plan of action. We are helping the government with developing this LAPA methodology, local adaptation plan of action, so that the local government institution can really be more serious and selective and making sure that they can also select the climate resilience related schemes, and they can differentiate from the standard or regular development scheme vis-a-vis the climate resilience scheme, which would be eventually aligned with the NAP, and that's how we can really make sure that we can go ahead achieving the NAP at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice concluding remarks from Asad Bhai. I would like to move to Dr. Janak Raj. I'm sorry I cannot lend you more than 1 minute to have your final remarks if you are available.
Very much there. I just want to make one point from the macroeconomy point of view.
Please.
You know that it's imperative that the resources have to be raised for climate change, whether they come by way of green bond, green equity, or green credit. But the issue is that where these resources have to come from. It's therefore very important that if we want that other sectors of the economy don't suffer because of green credit, green bonds, and green equity, it's important that we also increase the savings rate in the economy, either domestic savings rate, or we may have to import the savings by increasing the current account deficit, which of course poses its own challenges. So it's very important from the overall macroeconomy point of view that we also focus on increasing the savings rate. Otherwise, some other sectors would suffer. Yeah, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raj, for joining us. Dr. Pathiraja, your last remarks, if you have any, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think South Asian countries also work together in some aspects so we can share our experiences and move forward because the South Asian region is a vulnerable region with similar adaptive capacities to face the climate change impacts.
So you have to work together, in fact, more.
Yes.
Yeah, so any last comments? Mohanda.
Thank you for
Please,
the opportunity.
not more than 1 minute.
Yeah, less than 30 seconds I'll try.
Thank you.
So actually this is a very fascinating session and brainstorming as well. So my concern is when we are talking about the CSR opportunity and many things. Like Feni flood, it suddenly happened unprecedented and it happened consequently 2 years. But there is no such research support from these bank sector or others. It is very much needed. Instant assessment is required. CPD done one study, only the finance part, but later from the NOAMI and other side, we have started some scientific study, but there is no fund. So is there any opportunity for that? And another is the data issues. There is a last 20 years I am related to the hydroclimate issues. I have never found this kinds of solution yet. So maybe there should, yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Last words.
I would just do an open question, and I'm not expecting any answer as well.
We don't have time for answer today.
Exactly, that's why I'm not expecting any answer. So since we all understand that the future of climate finance is at stake, and maybe in near future there will be no climate finance, so why don't we move to the nature finance or nature economics? That's all.
I don't know. We will need more time to answer that question. But the future of climate finance is private. That's what I can see. So with this, I would like to conclude this. But being the chair, it's very tough to assemble all these things together. So many diversified opinions. But in general, I have 5 points, 6 points, in fact, to summarize. One is there is a passive or active agreement that finance has to be significantly raised from the domestic sources. From international sources, finance is drying up. Secondly, we need a national climate finance strategy, an umbrella strategy, under which central bank's climate finance policy strategy will be aligned. Everyone, whatever they do, it would be aligned under that strategy. That's very critical document. India has done that several months ago. We need to do that now. And thirdly, I think, as said, for climate projects, probably we would have to prioritize equity, justice, and impact-based indicators, even in the private sector also. So you have your economic indicators, but you need to add that part also into your evaluation and monitoring mechanisms. And thirdly, we agreed, I mean, the discussions came up that there is significant governance gap, data gap, and also there is information asymmetry, significant information asymmetry across stakeholders. We don't know who the other party is doing. So we need serious governance quality improvement here. I think it itself is a big topic to discuss and to do research. And one of the major determinants of this gap is the lack of data and technology.
Who will build up? Who will have that role responsibility
Yeah,
to
who?
build up the national-based data?
Exactly. Who will do that? So data, technology is not there enough, and we don't know who will do that, whether the government or not. That remains a question. And finally, I would really support what Dr. Pathiraja said. Countries like us, we need to unite together to push the international community to mobilize greater climate finance, which is, I would say, which is our right. It's not what, because it's not the privilege, it's our right to have a greater climate finance from the developed economies. And in order to do that, we all have to work together. And so a regionalism approach probably what is necessary at the moment the most. With this note, I would like to thank all the panelists and everyone sitting here, everyone joined online, our foreign panelists, special thanks to you. I would like to again extend my gracious thanks on behalf of CPD, being appointed as the chair of this session. Thank you all for joining today. I think tea is waiting for us. We should not do any further delay. Thank you very much. So we finish the session now. Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.